Pipeline explosion rocks Lagos neighborhood. President Buhari defies odds, presents 2019 budgets to National Assembly. On the international scene, UK government steps up plans for a no-deal Brexit. And as sport, African Golf Tour to feature 16 events.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Residents of Abule Egba in Lagos State woke up to a loud pipeline explosion that caused a huge inferno and raced through the neighborhood, destroying homes, automobiles, and shops. 4 vandals are suspected to have caused the explosion. They were believed to have tried to scoop petrol from the pipeline. Firefighters were said to have exhausted the water supply in their trucks while they tried to contain the blaze from spreading to a nearby petrol station. There was no water to do much more than wait. He was returning from his farm along Abuja Kefi Road on Tuesday, and by design, he should have been one of the most protected individuals in the country. But it appears nobody is out of reach for terrorists who prowl Nigeria's highways. Former Chief of Defense Staff Air Marshal Alex Bade was gunned down when his vehicle was attacked by unknown gunmen. The Nigerian Air Force announced unfortunate incidents. The 61-year-old Bade had died of bullet wounds he sustained in the attack. Bade served as Nigeria's defense chief under former President Goodluck Jonathan. He retired in 2015 and has been on trial ever since over allegations of corruption while in office. This attack underscores worsening security in the country. No arrest has been announced. There have been many reactions to the killing of Alex Bade. Senator Shehu Sani from Kaduna State said on his Twitter page that Bade's death was sad and tragic. He also said, quote, "If it can happen to Alex, it can happen to anyone," end quote. Senator Ben Bruce, representing Bayelsa East District, posted on his Twitter page, quote, "Are we so caught up in the APC versus PDP that we don't notice Nigeria is failing before our eyes?" Larry Olayinka, aide to Ekiti Governor Ayodele Fayose, questioned the security of Nigerians in this dispensation. He wondered about the fate of ordinary Nigerians if a former Chief of Defense Staff could be assassinated. Security was beefed up as President Muhammadu Buhari made his way to the National Assembly earlier today to present an almost 9 trillion naira 2019 budget to the lawmakers. A breakdown of the budget figures shows a quarter of the budget will go towards debt servicing. Capital expenditure will eat up 2 trillion naira. Other parts of the budget include recurrent expenditure of 4 trillion naira, statutory transfer almost half a trillion naira. Assumptions are based on $60 per barrel with crude oil production of 2.3 million barrels per day. Naira exchange is pegged at 305 to $1. Of course, the presentation had its moments when anti-Buhari lawmakers booed and jeered as the president laid out his budget. Some even held placards, while some belched out dissent. Not to be outdone, pro-Buhari lawmakers also chanted "Say Buhari" 4 more years to let the president know his own people were present as well. The president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Paul Usoro-San, pleaded not guilty on Tuesday before a federal high court in Lagos after he was arraigned by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC. He's been charged with an alleged 1.5 billion naira fraud. Incumbent governor of Akwa Ibom State, Emmanuel Udom, is also mentioned in the charge as being, quote, "constitutionally immune from prosecution," end quote. Usoro pleaded not guilty and was granted a 250 million naira bail. The case was adjourned till February. A subsidiary of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation is reported to have made a profit of almost 2 billion naira after taxes last year. NNPC Retail Managing Director Adeyemi Adetunji discussed this at the Pengasan Delegate Conference in Abuja. NNPC Retail reported a total profit before tax of 3.2 billion naira in 2017. He said the company plans to expand to other West African markets and that it would continue to ensure effective marketing strategies. NNPC Group Managing Director Mukanti Baru said the company will continue to grant the subsidiary a 30% market share as it continues to target good customer services and world-class business model and performance. Coming up, African stories. 19 staff members of a Uganda NGO die in a bus accident. And later, international news. UK government steps up plans for a no Brexit deal. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
This used to be me. But that was before I got the perfect bag. It's handy and easy to use. All I need in one compact space, just like my MTN Extra Value plan. I used to get one plan for my calls and then try to remember which data plan worked for me. Roaming was a totally different ballgame. Not anymore. I've got the MTN Extra Value all-in-one plan. If you're a data buff like me, you get extra data with some talk time. And if you like to make calls, you get extra talk time with some data. And when I'm abroad, I automatically browse, chat, and call right on the same plan. MTN Extra Value was made just for me.
More of data or calls, whichever one you prefer. MTN Extra Value is made just for you.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and African Stories. Uganda police say at least 19 staff members of a non-governmental organization have died and 6 others injured on Tuesday when the bus they were traveling in lost control and went off the cliff in eastern Uganda. Regional police spokesperson Roger Startika says the 6 were critically injured. He said the bus was carrying staff with American NGO based in Masindi district, southern Uganda. They were on their way to the Kapchowa region for their annual party when the vehicle crashed in the valley near Sepi, some 300 kilometers east of Kampala. Tartiki says the accident is being investigated to establish possible cause. Investigation into the post-election violence in Zimbabwe has revealed that the use of live bullets by the military to quell the country's post-election protests in August was disproportionate and unjustified. 6 persons were killed and 35 injured in the violence. An international inquiry into the violence led by former South African President Galama Mulate called for punishment for the perpetrators and compensation for the victims. The commission, in its report, found the main opposition party to have orchestrated, incited and prompted the violence. It says President Emmerson Mnangagwa's decision to deploy the military was found to be lawful, but blamed the military's use of live rounds for the deaths. The Lancet Group of labs in Nairobi has been busy testing and handling doping samples from Kenya and around the region since it was commissioned by the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, in August. As the first WADA-approved laboratory in East Africa, it is performing the blood analysis of athletes' biological passport samples collected from the region. Dr. Ahmed Kalebe, founder and CEO of the lab, said it was an honor to be approved by WADA.
Getting even up to 50 to 100 samples a week. I'm told it's the peak testing season because the athletes are off season. In Europe right now, I guess it's winter. So most of the athletes, there are not so many competitions going on across the world. So this is the time usually the athletes will be in their training programs, resting. And my understanding is previously, that's usually around the time when people try to cheat.
Kalebi says lab technicians are working around the clock to test samples, and the winter is the lab's peak testing season. He says as doping technology develops, the lab is upgrading its testing techniques in line with other specifications. South Africa has issued an arrest warrant for Zimbabwe's former First Lady Grace Mugabe over an alleged assault in a market district of Johannesburg last year. South African government had granted Grace Mugabe diplomatic immunity after the alleged assault with an electric cable came to light last year. That immunity was overturned this year by a South African court after the alleged victim, Modu Gabriela Engels, challenged the decision. Grace Mugabe is now a wanted person in South Africa. Police service spokesman Vishnu Naidu says on Wednesday they were seeking Interpol's help to enforce the warrant. Neither Grace Mugabe nor authorities in Harare have made a comment. Sierra Leone doctors have returned to work on Tuesday after a 13-day strike over pay and condition that paralyzed hospitals nationwide. The strike impacted the health system in the country, leaving the sick unattended and its biggest and busiest hospitals in disarray. Doctors had been demanding pay rises, equipment purchases and health insurance for medical professionals. President of Junior Doctors Association, Abdunjai, says the Health Ministry has now agreed on a timeline to meet the doctors' demands over the course of next year. When we return, international news, UK prepares for a no Brexit deal, and later sports, 16 events to populate Nigeria's golf tour. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Are you sure you want to do this?
Adam, go and bring us your husband. Okay, hello baby.
We're in this together, okay? Can you hear me? Keep coming forward.
Wait, stop.
You okay, lean to your right. Keep walking down. Keep walking to the left. Yes.
You're almost here.
Keep going.
You are here. Wow, you did it.
I'm just so glad I didn't have to use my cane to do this.
And I am so glad no other man got you before me. Let me be your eyes.
We will never stop working to give you a network you can rely on so you can enjoy life's special moments. MTN, everywhere you go.
We are on the road every day, canvassing throughout Africa for news you really need. We follow this story everywhere, from every corner of Nigeria to the wide African expanse. We bring you what's making headlines. We connect you with news you can use. ANN, African News Network, in a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News, the news around the globe. The UK government has concluded preparations for a no-deal departure from the European Union amid widespread criticisms of British Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit deal. Ministers approved $2.5 billion worth of funding for government departments to help them prepare for UK's exit from the 28-member bloc without a formal agreement on the terms of its withdrawal. As it stands, the Cabinet has agreed that all departments must also move to fully implement their emergency no-deal contingency plans. Thousands of letters will be sent to businesses throughout the country advising them how to prepare for such a scenario. The UK is scheduled to depart the EU at the end of March next year, almost 3 years after 52% of Britons voted to quit the bloc during the divisive referendum held in June 2016. A U.S. judge has cagingly chastised President Donald Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, for lying to FBI agents probing Russia interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. District Judge Emmett Sullivan told Flynn, a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General and former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, that he had betrayed his country. Flynn pleaded guilty to lying to FBI agents about his conversations with Sergei Krisyuk, Russian ambassador to Washington 2 years ago after Trump's election victory, but before he took office. Special counsel Robert Mueller, leading the investigation, asked the judge not to sentence Flynn to prison because he had already provided substantial cooperation over the course of many interviews. American officials plan to review sanctions imposed on North Korea and a ban on travel to the country by U.S. citizens to ensure that they do not limit humanitarian aid. Stephen Biegun, U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, made the announcement to reporters. Biegun says 8 groups have complained the strict enforcement of sanctions imposed on North Korea has delayed efforts and in some cases prevented the delivery of aid to the impoverished country. Canada's foreign ministry says a third Canadian citizen has been detained in China. This arrest threatens to escalate an already protracted diplomatic feud between the two countries. 2 other Canadians were detained in China after the arrest of the senior Huawei executive Mon Wanchichi in Canada early this month. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said it was not aware of the report. Beijing has threatened Canada with grave consequences if Meng is not freed. Meng faces extradition to the U.S. and charges linked to fraud and violations of U.S. sanctions on Iran. Russia, Iran and Turkey, supporters of the main sides in Syria's complex civil war, have failed to agree on the makeup of a United Nations-sponsored Syrian Constitutional Committee. They have called for it to convene early next year to kick off a viable peace process. In a joint statement read out by Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov after the trial met the UN Syria peace envoy Staffan de Mistura in Geneva, they said the new initiative should be guided by a sense of compromise and constructive engagement. The foreign ministers of the 3 nations were hoping to seal their joint proposal on a committee which could usher in elections and win UN approval. But a statement by the three did not mention the composition of the panel, pointed to lingering disagreements over a list of candidates suspected or rather submitted by Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and his rebel adversaries. Belgium Prime Minister Charles Michel has resigned amid pressure on his government after the largest coalition party quit because of differences over migration. With only 5 months to go until planned legislative elections in May, it was not clear whether the country's king would accept Michel's departure on Tuesday. The right-wing New Flemish Alliance left Michel leading a minority government earlier this month after the Prime Minister sought parliamentary approval to support a United Nations pact promoting a global approach to refugee and migrant flows against its wishes. The NVA launched a widely criticized social media campaign against the compact called Celebre for European anti-immigration parties. This campaign featured pictures of Muslim women with their faces covered and claiming that the accord focused on allowing migrants to retain the cultural practices of their homelands. But it quickly withdrew the materials after the campaign came under fire. Still ahead, sport. African Golf Tour to feature 16 events. Stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
If you know fit go internet or follow for Twitter, you know fit snap photo send or get it photo send. Now because you dey use Palasa, your phone no dey answer. See me see wahala. My brother, go get smartphone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no go for your hand, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone. Phone wey no fit take selfie. Drop that Palasa phone. No be correct phone, yeah. Drop that Palasa phone.
Upgrade to a smartphone today and get double data for 6 months on any MTN data bundle you buy. Simply purchase a smartphone from any store, anywhere in Nigeria, or bring your current smartphone from any network. Insert your MTN SIM card to start enjoying your double data bonus. Offer is open to all new and existing MTN subscribers. Join the largest smartphone movement today.
Make it not for your hand, that's Palasa phone.
Welcome back. This is in the news and sport. Organizers of the new African Golf Tour says sustained events would be featured in next year's tour. Tour President Emeka Okata says the tour was upgraded from West Africa Golf Tour to accommodate players outside the region who had been part of the tour since it began in 2016. Among the championships to feature in 2019 are FCT Classic, Eco Challenge Cup, Memorial Port Harcourt Classic, Southeast Shootouts, Shagamu Classic and 1st October Championship. UEFA has launched an investigation into alleged racist chants during Chelsea's Europa League tie at Vidi. Chelsea condemns the chanting and promised to take the strongest possible action against any supporters found to be guilty of singing racist songs. The incident in Hungary came days after 4 fans were suspended for abusing Manchester City's Raheem Sterling. The England forward later issued a statement accusing British media of fueling racism in the way it reports certain stories about black players. Chelsea banned 4 supporters pending an internal inquiry. UEFA's investigation results will be published by the middle of January. And that is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on this and other stories, visit our website, annafrica.net. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.